August 14th, 1933. The scanning camera of this small Ohio bank has little to record. Business is slow, but today business will be brisker than usual. Bank robbery is a high-risk profession. Yet in this Depression year, it has become a popular form of free enterprise. Needing only a gun, it shows the fastest profit. In the past months, more than 600 banks have had their vaults emptied of over $3.5 million. With his accomplices, one man has begun a career that will shock the nation. Within a few short months, he'll be public enemy number one, deadly, violent, and doomed. For however fast he runs, John Dillinger cannot escape his final appointment with destiny.
Good town, Mooresville, Indiana. Peaceful. Friendly people. Nice youngsters. Yet, small prairie towns like this have bred some of the legendary outlaws in American history. Jesse James, the Dalton Gang, the Younger Brothers, Billy the Kid. Not gangsters born in big city slums, but gunmen out of quiet church-going towns. Gunmen like John Dillinger. He was raised here. He committed his first crime right here. Armed robbery of a local grocer. In his brief and explosive career, Dillinger also became a legend, even a figure of public admiration. Perhaps because we sometimes find in the violence of others a secret fulfillment. Our own guarded instincts often make of the outlaw a hero, and in his punishment, we find our own. Dillinger was part of an era. He belonged to the desperate years of 1933 and 1934, when a violent wave of robbery, kidnapping, and murder swept the Midwestern states. In telling the Dillinger story, we have blended existing historical records with recreated documentary films.
With a run on the banks, the Great Depression has begun. The nation is shutting down. Unwanted men walk the streets. A mood of bitterness and frustration poisons the country as the unemployed stretch the bread lines in the cities. The shanty towns of millions of dispossessed spread like sores. And outside the factories, angry men battle for jobs. In rural America, farmers demand a living price for milk and crops. But in the Dust Bowl states, other farmers have no crops, grimly watch their topsoil blow away. A charred sky hangs over America. Out of it now come sudden flashes of violence. Singly and in packs, outlaw predators stalk the Middle West. Ma Barker and her church-going family of killers. Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow, self-romanticized murderers and robbers. Machine Gun Kelly and his wife Kate, kidnappers. Pretty Boy Floyd, leader of the Kansas City Massacre. Babyface Nelson, boyish killer. But above all, one criminal's meteoric rise has transfixed the nation. John Dillinger. Captured on January 25th, 1934 in Tucson, Arizona, Dillinger has become the most wanted man in America. To many of the 1,500 newsmen, dignitaries, and ordinary citizens permitted to view the caged outlaw, he also has become a real-life matinee idol of crime. With him is the gang of escaped convicts who have made bank robbing almost a spectator sport. Russell Clark. Harry Pierpont, a former prison mate, now wanted for the murder of an Ohio sheriff. Also charged with the same murder, Charles Mackley. Evelyn Billy Frechette, Dillinger's half-Indian girlfriend, who is one of the 3 women trapped with the outlaws. While attorneys for 5 states struggle for custody of the wanted men, some Tucson police favor the state giving the highest reward. Indeed, Dillinger has offered Wisconsin, which has no capital punishment, enough money to outbid the other states. But one man, Robert Estill, is determined not to lose the quarry. The brilliant young prosecutor from Indiana is already being suggested for governor.
It was a scramble. Ohio wanted 3 of the men on a murder charge. I wanted Dillinger. Finally, traded the rest of the gang to get him. But we had to move fast. The defense attorneys were trying every trick they could think of to stall things. So I decided to move Dillinger by air to get him out of Tucson. Dillinger claimed we were shanghaiing him in a legal sense. I guess we were. Anyway, he was, well, reluctant, you might say.
Frustrated in making a deal with Wisconsin, now facing execution for a policeman's death during a bank robbery in Indiana, Dillinger rages against his abductors.
Come on. Get going.
Shackled at last to a seat inside the plane, he remarks contemptuously, "Hell, I don't jump out of these things." In Chicago, an awesome reception committee awaits the outlaw. As Dillinger is led from the commercial plane to which he's been transferred, he confronts 150 heavily armed Chicago and Indiana police. Hustled to the 13-car convoy which will escort him to Crown Point, Indiana. Dillinger is in the custody of the Chicago policeman. He often is threatened by phone. Sergeant Frank Reynolds, who now tells him, "You just start something, and you'll be the first dead man."
Go.
Returned at last to the Crown Point jail in his home state, Dillinger is treated like a star and behaves like one. He poses with his captors, Prosecutor Robert Estill and Sheriff Lillian Holly. A cameraman tells Estill to put his arm around Dillinger, and the attorney, exhausted after 48 sleepless hours, thoughtlessly obliges. Dillinger impudently leans his elbow on Estill's shoulder. The resulting photograph rocks the country and forever shatters Estill's brilliantly promising political career. But the public is fascinated by Dillinger. Who is this arrogant bad man? Even an outlaw is once a pretty baby. Born June 22nd, 1903, he is motherless 3 years later. He is raised by an older sister and his strict church-going father, a grocer, who soon moves the family to a farm near Mooresville. Often a childhood captive tethered for monotonous hours to a wagon wheel, young John is lonely and restless. A poor student and habitual truant, he is frequently punished by his father, but seldom praised. Briefly, he wins glory as second baseman on the town ball team. Then, influenced by the older umpire, Eddie Singleton, he commits his first attempted holdup from the steps of the local church. But at the county courthouse, Dillinger quickly confesses. His promised leniency, he is harshly sentenced to 10 years. Even his victim, grocer B.F. Morgan, is surprised.
Well, I think the judge went considerably out of line. Mind you, I wasn't happy when this fellow jumped me. Robberies is a serious offense, and you've got to treat them serious. But I'd known young John since he was a small boy. Not much different from any other boy, trying to figure out who he was and where he was going. And he made a wrong step, but the judge shouldn't have thrown the book at him. Any fool knows that you don't make a boy better by knocking him down, but just make him mean.
At Indiana's Michigan City Penitentiary, an embittered Dillinger spends his university days in crime. His mentor is a list of some of the most experienced, hardened criminals in America. All our bank robbers are killers, serving long-term sentences. From these men, he learns how to case a bank, what weapons to choose, how to prepare an escape, what underworld fixers are ready to help. For 9 years, Dillinger lives in the prisoner's limbo of drabbed lines and clanging iron, of feet shuffling from cage to cage, of the deadly monotony of life deferred. Then on May 22nd, 1933, after repeated denials, he is paroled. He is 29 years old and eager for action. All of Dillinger's pent-up hatred against society now explodes. Twice photographed by alert amateurs, he creates an erratic path of havoc and escapes the law in a series of running gun battles, often shielded by captured hostages. Always on the run, he still engineers the breakout of 10 fellow convicts from the Indiana Penitentiary and robs banks with deadly regularity. New Carlisle, Daleville and Montpelier, Bluffton, Indianapolis, Greencastle, Racine, East Chicago, Indiana, where he is charged with killing a policeman. Having looted banks of $173,000, Dillinger takes refuge in Tucson, only to be captured there and given over to Robert Estill. Now, after 7 short months of freedom, Dillinger is back in the Crown Point, Indiana jail, heavily guarded against any rescue attempt by members of his gang. He is past the point of no return. He now faced the electric chair, but Dillinger had other plans. He called an underworld lawyer, Louis Pickett, and was visited by his girlfriend, Billie Frechette. Somehow he got a gun. Dillinger claimed it was a wooden pistol he'd whittled in jail. But there is evidence that it was a real weapon, smuggled in after Pickett allegedly bribed an Indiana judge. On March 3rd, 1934, hardly 5 weeks after his capture, Dillinger was ready to use that gun. At 9:15 that morning, as here recreated by a newsreel cameraman, Dillinger forces his way out of the exercise bullpen and quickly captures Deputy Ernest Blunk. With fellow escapee Herbert Youngblood, Dillinger uses his hostages as decoys to summon and capture 3 other guards and the warden. Dillinger wants more firepower. He gets it in the outer office where he disarms a National Guardsman and seizes 2 machine guns. In the kitchen, he rounds up 3 farmer vigilantes, then enters the unguarded alley to reach the prison garage. With Blanc and a mechanic as hostages, he roars to freedom in Sheriff Holly's own car. After one of the most outrageous escapes in American prison history, Dillinger finally drops his hostages and gives them $4, apologizing that it is all he can spare. But as he speeds toward Chicago, he makes a crucial mistake. By crossing a state line in a stolen vehicle, Dillinger has now fallen under the jurisdiction of a young, little-known federal agency, the FBI. Wanted. This man is dangerous. John Dillinger is again at large. The police have in custody only a cardboard target. But while lawmen grimly prepare to recapture the escaped outlaw, many of the public have become his partisans.
I think he robbed to help the poor, and I think any good man would. I would, myself.
Why not rob? It's better than selling apples in the street.
As tough and hard as times was, somebody that got the money out of the banks and got it into circulation, they was doing the people a favor.
Despite the mixed feelings of the public at large, more than 5,000 lawmen and volunteers were now engaged in a campaign against one man. The nerve center of the Dillinger manhunt was here in Chicago, a city where big business crime had learned to wear a respectable face. Dillinger belonged to a different breed, an independent gunman in open and spectacular collision with the law. But his chief hunter and adversary was far from spectacular. A small, dapper, intense young man of 30, head of the FBI Chicago office. His name is Melvin Purvis. With this man, John Dillinger will hold his last appointment.
Since he fell under FBI jurisdiction, it is the mission of the Chicago Bureau to capture John Dillinger. And the Chicago Bureau intends to fulfill that mission.
Mr. Purvis, are you going to capture him or kill him?
That depends on Dillinger.
Dillinger strikes first. Barely 3 days after his Crown Point escape, with Babyface Nelson and a quickly assembled new gang, he leaves the town in chaos after holding up the Security National Bank in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and robbing it of $49,000. For the next 5 weeks, the Dillinger gang plays a desperate game of tag with the FBI and the police of 5 states. Always on the move, always threatened by sudden death. The law's dragnet is closing on Dillinger, and the attrition of his accomplices is high. On March 12, he robs a Mason City, Iowa bank of $52,000. But both John Hamilton and Dillinger are wounded. March 16. His fellow escapee from Crown Point, Herbert Youngblood, is shot and killed by Michigan police. April 3. In an FBI stakeout in St. Paul, gang member Eddie Green is fatally wounded, just after Dillinger and his girlfriend Billy Frechette have shot their way out of another trap. April 9. Billy Frechette is captured by the FBI while she awaits Dillinger in a Chicago tavern. As elusive as summer lightning, Dillinger remains free. Amid the massive manhunt, he even makes an impromptu visit to his father's farm. Like a visiting celebrity, he enjoys the home cooking, reads his press notices, and receives carload after carload of relatives and friends, none of whom ever tips the police or the FBI who are patrolling the area. poses for home movies with the wooden pistol he claims he used for his escape from Crown Point. After all, he's a hometown boy who made good. Even his father is proud of him.
He said, Dad, don't believe half that's in the newspapers, for it isn't so. And he says, I haven't hurt anybody. And even if he has robbed a bank or two, about John's escape from Crown Point, I think he just watched for a chance. And when he thought he had the chance come, I just made a break and was lucky enough to get away. I think luck is with him. And he wanted to get away because they're trying to make a mountain out of a molehill.
At Chicago's FBI office, there is little time for family picnics. Agents sift through hundreds of leads from ordinary citizens and the underworld, relentlessly driven by Melvin Purvis.
On April 22nd, we got something solid. A tip that the Dillinger gang was hiding out at the Little Bohemia Lodge in the Wisconsin North Woods. On instruction from the chief, Mr. Hoover, we immediately flew to the nearest airport and joined another group of FBI agents from St. Paul. With 17 men, we got out to the lodge after dark and fanned out around the main building. And suddenly, several men appeared at the door. 3 of them started for a car. We shouted for them to halt. I guess they didn't hear us. Their car radio was on. So, we opened fire.
In the car are 3 innocent men. One, a young civilian Conservation Corps worker, is dead. His companions, a gas salesman and a cook, are severely wounded. While the FBI agents continue to blast the lodge throughout the night, Babyface Nelson escapes and at a neighboring cottage kills an officer and shoots down 2 others. At the first shots, the rest of the gang also has fled, leaving 3 women to be captured. Dillinger, with his Lieutenant John Hamilton, seizes a car from a nearby farm couple. Mr. and Mrs. E.J. Mitchell.
2 men came in and asked for a drink of water. And upon Mr. Mitchell telling them to help themselves, they said, why, we don't want a drink. What we want is a car to make our getaway, because the federal officers are after us, and we must get out of here. Now, I'm John Dillinger, but I don't want you to be afraid. We're not going to hurt you any. We just came here to get a car. And I'm not so bad as they have me pictured out. Now, Mother, don't be afraid.
While Dillinger and Hamilton desperately try to reach St. Paul, then considered a sanctuary for men on the run, search parties and patrols fan out over the Midwestern states. At dozens of roadblocks, police and volunteer vigilantes seek to intercept the fleeing bandits. Dillinger has long learned to avoid much-traveled highways, and whenever possible, warily holds to the network of country back roads. He is sighted at last 20 miles south of St. Paul. In a 10-mile running gun battle, Deputy Sheriff Norman Dieter and other officers mortally wound Hamilton. But eluding his pursuers, Dillinger seizes another car and vanishes. Dieter and his men return, empty-handed.
What? Come here a minute. We understand you're chasing Dillinger, right?
Yeah, I was Dillinger, all right, but he got away.
Get him?
I think we got one of them, though. Sure shot hell out of their car.
After the fiasco at Little Bohemia, a shockwave of public criticism hits Melvin Purvis and J. Edgar Hoover, demanding their resignations. Hoover avoids public response, but he quietly dispatches Special Agent Sam Cowley to Chicago. Though Purvis remains as head of the office, Cowley is now in command of the search for Dillinger, who is reported seen in widely separated places all over the country.
Look, I've seen Dillinger's picture 100 times. I studied it, molds and all. The fella come in here was a spitting image of him. I still think it was him.
I tell you, I seen him. Told me to fill her up. Had a bulge right here under his arm. Looked like a shoulder holster to me.
Then, on May 2nd, the most advertised automobile in America, the blood-stained getaway car, is found abandoned on a North Chicago street. Dillinger has returned to the very center of the dragnet. Galled by repeated failures to capture Dillinger, the FBI and the Chicago police compete in separate efforts to trap the outlaw. One city officer, Sergeant Frank Reynolds, hopes to confront Dillinger first.
Just because we found the car is no proof Dillinger's in Chicago. He's smart. It might be just a plan to get us off his trail. All the same, there's a good chance he's here. Of course, you might say I got a kind of personal thing going with Dillinger. He likes to make us cops look like fools. Used to call me up from God knows where, try to tease me. Tell me he was going to kill me, or that he was coming out and burn down my house. And I used to tell him to come right on out. It's funny. Sometimes you feel that you know your enemies better than you do your friends. I think he's out there. Exactly where, we don't know. Yet.
Lost in the city's anonymous faces, Dillinger has vanished so completely that much of the underworld thinks him dead. He takes a room in the North Side. As Jimmy Lawrence, a Board of Trade clerk, he leads a quiet, middle-class life. With a new girlfriend, Polly Hamilton, he tries to forget that at any moment, his life may explode with the roar of death. Together they attend the baseball games at Wrigley Field, view the wonders of the Chicago World's Fair, and walk the Midway like ordinary tourists. Later, Polly talks of him.
I didn't know it was John Dillinger. I just thought he was one of the nicest fellas I ever met. He had a low voice, a wonderful smile, a neat dresser. Oh, he gave me presents sometimes, a ring, a dress. Even gave me money once to have my teeth fixed. But that wasn't it. He was really good to me. You know what I mean? He took me places, restaurants, baseball games, the movies. We played cards sometimes. He used to sing to me a lot. I remember one song especially. All I do the whole night through is dream of you. Golly, what a lot of fun we had.
Dillinger knows his life is moving down a dead-end street. Most of his companions are on the run or captured, killed or soon to be killed. Still, he dreams of an innocent, simple life, of fleeing to Mexico, of dropping out of sight forever. He dyes his hair black, grows a mustache. Through his underworld fixer, Pickett, he arranges for plastic surgery at the home of James Probasco. It does not go well. The young assistant, Dr. Harold Cassidy, remembers.
And it didn't start off too good. When you've got Dillinger for a patient, you're just naturally kind of nervous. I dripped the ether into a towel over his face. I guess I gave him too much too fast. He stopped breathing, began to turn blue. He'd swallowed his tongue. I hollered for Doc Larser. He grabbed a forceps and pulled the tongue back. We got him breathing again. And then the doc went to work. He wanted quite an overhaul on his face. Moles removed, fixed the dent in his nose, the cleft in his chin. He erased a lip scar. When he saw what we did, he was pretty mad. Said all we'd done was mess up his face. Well, he looked like a mess to me, too.
But the old face still looms on the posters. Federal and state rewards now total $20,000. It is a tempting sum amid the dubious loyalties of the underworld. Knowing that sooner or later someone will betray him, he keeps on the move. Unaware that his life already is being sold, he spends a night at the apartment of a woman he trusts, a call house madam, Anna Sage. It is July 21st, 1934. Across the city in the Great Northern Hotel, at 6 p.m. that same evening, Melvin Purvis and Sam Cowley await two visitors. Sergeant Martin Zarkovich and Captain Timothy O'Neill of Indiana's East Chicago Police reveal a tip they've gotten on Dillinger. A detective familiar with the underworld, Zarkovich sets a further meeting between the FBI agents and his own informant. 9 p.m. The four men wait at the rendezvous near the Children's Hospital. A few minutes late, the informant appears. Dillinger's trusted friend, the brothel keeper, Anna Sage. Fearing a trap, she moves on past the waiting agents. Only when she recognizes Zarkovich does she feel safe enough to return. With the detective and Purvis, she drives to a secluded place on the lakefront. Later, concealed by the FBI from possible vengeance, Anna Sage remembers.
John Dillinger came to my house several times with Polly. He called himself Jimmy Lawrence, but I know it's John Dillinger. He left also some guns in my apartment. I have already some problem. When I meet with Mr. Purvis, I tell him this problem. The government is wanting to deport me, to leave my husband and son, to deport me to Romania. I asked Mr. Purvis, what can he do? He promised to help me all he can. He told me I will get some money for the reward also. I say to him, I will cooperate. And I tell him, the next day, Sunday, I'm going to the movies, the Marlboro Theater, with Polly and John Dillinger. And I tell Mr. Purvis, I will wear a red skirt so they can recognize me. And I will call him to let him know as soon as we are leaving.
The FBI plans its trap. After a search by thousands of men, a woman has brought the key. It is July 22nd, 1934.
By 10 o'clock that Sunday morning, we'd alerted every agent. And the office was crowded with nearly 30 men. As Sam Cowley briefed the men on the plan of operation, what each agent was to do, I think everyone knew this was the real thing. You could feel the tension. I spoke to the men. I was standing right here. I reminded them of Mr. Hoover's orders. Only pistols, no heavy weapons. I told them what the risks were, that it was strictly our operations. Not even the Chicago police had been notified. I told them we hoped to take Dillinger alive, but he must be taken at any cost. Then came the hardest part. In the heat, we waited.
During the next hours, the agents memorized the Marlboro house plan and all its exits. They study every available photograph of their target. Through Zarkovich, they learn of Dillinger's altered features. Most agents, including Cowley and Purvis, have never seen the outlaw at all. Outside, as the afternoon wears on, Chicago swelters in the heat wave. At her apartment, Anna Sage awaits Dillinger's arrival. Then, in the FBI office at 7 o'clock, the phone rings. About to leave for the theater, Anna Sage is now uncertain whether Dillinger will go to the Marlboro or the Biograph. The Biograph. Once more, Dillinger's uncertain moves have thrown their plans into disarray.
At least 7 times in his desperate struggle to survive, John Dillinger had escaped the law. He was playing a losing game. A game which on this summer night of July 22nd, 1934, was in its last moves. Yet there was still the possibility that once again he would elude his pursuers. Uncertain which theater Dillinger would attend, the FBI had to set 2 traps instead of 1, and did so without alerting the Chicago police. Only 2 men, Martin Zarkovich and Melvin Purvis, could recognize Anna Sage, the informant who was the key to the identification of Dillinger. Thus it was decided that while the main body of special agents stood ready at the FBI office in downtown Chicago, Zarkovich with a sharpshooter would await Dillinger at the Marlboro, here on the west side. Melvin Purvis with Special Agent Ralph Brown would keep watch for the outlaw at the Biograph, 5 miles away in North Chicago. 8:45 p.m. Purvis and Brown wait for a man they have never seen, a man they may have to kill. As the minutes pass, Purvis grows uncertain. Perhaps Dillinger again has changed his mind, will not come at all. Now, for the first time, Purvis sees the quarry that he and thousands of others have hunted for so many months. Public enemy number 1. As he walks easily with Anna Sage and Polly, the wary 6th sense that has saved Dillinger so often now fails him. Unsuspecting, he enters the trap. While Brown phones Cowley and his waiting agents, Purvis hastily buys a ticket. Hoping to find seats behind the outlaw, he enters the theater where Dillinger and his companions already are enjoying the show.
I'm in love with you. Blackie, get out of this. Take me out of this.
Quiet.
Blackie, please listen.
Quiet.
Unable to spot Dillinger in the dark, crowded theater, anxious not to alert the outlaw, Purvis returns uncertainly to the lobby. Questioning the cashier, he learns that the show's running time is 94 minutes for the main feature, 2 hours and 4 minutes for the complete program. Hastily, Purvis describes the situation to his partner Brown, who reports that Cowley and the main force of FBI agents are now on their way to the theater. Once more, Purvis goes to the box office to check the show's running time. Once more, the cashier tells him. Fearful that Dillinger may unexpectedly leave the show before it is over, Purvis impatiently awaits reinforcements. It is nearly 9:30 when the other agents converge on the Biograph. Cowley reports that to avoid the risk of a shootout in the auditorium, J. Edgar Hoover in Washington has ordered the agents to wait until Dillinger comes out of the theater. Again, Purvis confirms the movie's scheduled time with the cashier, who is puzzled by so much strange activity. As Zarkovich and the sharpshooter, Charles Winstead, arrive from the Marlboro, Cowley posts his men to their assigned positions. Purvis, in a doorway next to the theater, will light a cigar as a signal when Dillinger emerges. Near him, 3 other men, Zarkovich, Winstead, and Agent H.E. Hollis, will close on the outlaw in the final moments. Now, for the 4th time, Purvis checks the length of the show. Alarmed, fearing a holdup, the cashier summons the theater manager. After hearing his employees, the manager scans the street.
He does not like what he sees. Quickly calls the police. Later, the cashier recalls.
First, there's this little fella keeps showing up at the window. He buys a ticket. Then he's back. He wants to know how long the show runs. Then he comes asking again, and I'm thinking, who is this nut? He's got a nervous ailment or something? Then all of a sudden, I begin to notice these fellas in their pressy suits out in the street. And I say to myself, hey, what's going on?
It is 10:10. Inside the theater, Dillinger is caught up in the passions and crimes of movie make-believe.
Or we can give warning to the host of other gangsters and murderers that they are through. In 1904, when the General Slocum burned, I made a boyish effort to save Blackie Gallagher's life. Today, I demand from you his death.
10:20. Certain not even a mouse can escape his trap, Cowley waits. Then in an instant, the ambush is nearly exposed. In answer to the theater manager's summons, the Chicago police appear and threaten two agents in the alley. Quickly, Cowley flashes his credentials, explains merely that it is a federal stakeout on a fugitive. As the police leave, it is almost time for the show to break. In the biograph, unaware that 30 guns await him in the street, Dillinger watches preparations for another execution.
You're going to make a great sacrifice, ruin your career for what? So that I can rot in this hole. Would you do that to me? No, thanks. Don't commute me, I don't want it. Hey, look, Jim. If I can't live the way I want, then at least let me die when I want.
Blackie.
What? So long, kid.
The show is over. Outside the biograph, every agent's eyes are on the doorway through which Dillinger now appears with the two women. It is 10:30. He has 25 seconds to live. Without suspicion, Dillinger glances at Purvis as he passes. In supreme tension, the agent lights his cigar with shaking fingers. The signal is given. In the next doorway, Agent Hollis waits. Warily, he closes in behind the outlaw. As arranged, Anna Sage falls back. Reaching for his gun, Zarkovich joins the other agents. Now, too late, Dillinger at last senses the trap. Wounded by ricocheting bullets, two women moan on the sidewalk as Purvis speaks to Dillinger. There is no reply.
Move back over here. Get the car. Get the ambulance. Come on, get in here. Come on, car.
As his body is placed in an ambulance to be carried to the morgue, Dillinger's brief and explosive public career is over. He has just passed his 31st birthday. While Dr. Charles B. Parker, a reporter and part-time coroner's aide, shrewdly takes charge of his own news scoop, word of Dillinger's death already has brought a carnival crowd to the morgue. The morbids, as the attendants call them.
All right. Listen, we can't keep the press out here. Now we have to let the press in. Excuse me. All right. Okay. All right. All right, just the press. Just the press, please. Only the press at the moment. That's it. Let him in. All right, the press.
Never told of the FBI stakeout that killed Dillinger, Sergeant Reynolds confronts his old adversary too late. Still, he pays his respects.
Well, the bullet that killed him entered at the rear of the neck.
at the level of about the 6th cervical vertebra. Now, it probably passed through the medulla oblongata and the pharynx.
Finally, some of the lawmen proudly pose with their famous quarry, like hunters who have bagged a big game animal. The animal is, of course, a man.
All right, that's enough. Let's get him over here and let the public see him.
In death, Dillinger is still box office. In Chicago, 15,000 persons view the body. Blood-stained handkerchiefs sell at a premium, and his bearers have to force their way to the hearse. As he takes his son home, Dillinger's father refuses a showman's offer to buy the corpse.
So the hometown boy from Mooresville came back to his beginnings. A rebel, outlaw, victim, social outcast. Helped by press and public, and indeed by the FBI, which dramatized him by making him public enemy #1. He became a celebrity. A strange and troubling commentary, not only on him, but on ourselves. As always, questions and myths surrounded his death. Witnesses have held that he was unarmed, that his death was an execution. Others have asked why, when his whereabouts were known, he could not have been captured in a less public place. Thousands of dollars were rumored to have been found on his body and given to the family of one of his victims. Despite FBI fingerprint identification, there's even a theory that the man killed at the Biograph was not Dillinger at all, but a double, actually named Jimmy Lawrence. The obscure destinies of Dillinger's friends and foes raised fewer questions.
Harry Pierpont was executed in the Ohio State Prison 3 months after Dillinger's death. In an attempted escape, his partner Charles Makeley was killed before he could be electrocuted. Babyface Nelson was shot down in a gun battle near Barrington, Illinois, after killing Sam Cowley and Agent Hollis, who had taken part in the Biograph stakeout. Dr. Harold Cassidy, the nervous assistant in Dillinger's plastic surgery, committed suicide in 1946. Robert Estell's political career never recovered after his photograph with Dillinger. He died in quiet obscurity in 1961. Sleeping on the railroad tracks after an evening in a bar, Eddie Singleton was killed by a train. A week after Dillinger's death, his father, his sister Audrey, her husband, and his half-brother Hubert began a theatrical tour. Anna Sage, the woman in red, who betrayed Dillinger, got $5,000 reward, but was deported to Romania despite Purvis's assurances. A year after the Biograph killing, Melvin Purvis left the FBI to organize Junior G-men for a cereal company. In 1960, he committed suicide.
Behind these walls of the Indiana Penitentiary, John Dillinger served 4 of his 9 prison years. When he emerged through the gate, society had exacted its judicial vengeance. But was he a better citizen? Was he a free man or a man already doomed? The record speaks for itself. Dillinger's public career lasted exactly 14 months. It was a costly career. To the banks, to the law agencies, to innocent persons swept to their deaths, and to himself. In the battle of violence against violence, there was no winner, only a vast human waste. It should be worth asking what went wrong. Was Dillinger twisted to violence by a lonely and often friendless boyhood? By the sternness of the father who gave him not love but rebuke? By an excessive and misapplied punishment for a first offense? Or by 9 barren years in the company of hardened criminals? Was the failure all his or partly ours? Perhaps in the answer, we might learn how it was that a promising baseball player wound up dead in an alley in Chicago.